The alarm screamed through my ship before I even reached my command chair, and the first word out of my mouth was a question I already feared the answer to. Why is this system loud? My name is Vrelkath. I am a survey officer of the hegemony, and for 30 years my work has been simple and quiet. I find young worlds. I catalog the creatures crawling on them. I mark which ones are weak enough to take, and I move on. I have done this on more worlds than I can count, and never once has a target world made noise like this. The screens around me filled with light, red signals, blue signals, signals layered on top of signals until the display looked like a storm. My junior officer, Tessin, gripped the edge of her station with all 4 hands. Sub-Commander, I am reading thousands of transmissions, maybe more. The entire system is speaking. That is impossible, I said. Pull the original probe data, the one we sent ahead. She did. The file opened, old and dusty with age, and I read it the way a starving creature reads a meal. 400 years ago, our long-range probe had drifted into this small yellow star system and looked at the third planet. It had seen soft, slow, 2-legged beings. It had seen them burning black rocks for heat. It had seen them throwing small metal objects at each other in their little wars. The probe had given them a rating, and the rating was the lowest one we use. Primitive, harmless, ours, whenever we wanted them. I had read that file a dozen times before we left dock. I had laughed at it. A world of slow walkers who had not yet learned to leave their own ground. An easy claim, a simple report. The kind of mission they give to an old officer like me as a reward for years of good service. The data is 400 years old. Tessin said quietly. Sub-Commander, that is a long time. Not long enough, I snapped. No species climbs from burning rocks to filling a star system with noise in 400 years. It does not happen. It cannot happen. Even our own people needed thousands of years to cross that gap. There is a mistake. There is always a mistake. Find it. But there was no mistake. The closer we drifted toward the inner planets, the worse it became. We passed the cold outer giants, those huge balls of gas and storm, and I saw things floating around them that made my stomach turn cold. Stations, old, broken, abandoned stations, yes, but stations all the same. Rings of metal built by hands around worlds that no primitive should ever have reached. Someone has been here, I said. Another power. Another empire came through, and these creatures are their slaves. There are no other ships, Tessin reported. No other signatures. Everything we are seeing, Sub-Commander, every piece of metal in this system, carries the same chemical signature, the same building style. The same hand made all of it. The same hand, I repeated. The third planet's hand. I told myself she was wrong. I needed her to be wrong. A career, a reputation, a comfortable retirement, all of it rested on this being a simple world of simple creatures. So I did what proud officers do when they are afraid. I gave an order to push forward, because turning back would mean admitting I was scared. Take us closer, I said. Carefully, quietly. Run the ship dark. No active scans. We watch, we learn, we do not announce ourselves. We slid inward on silent engines. We dimmed our lights. We became a shadow moving through a system that should have belonged to children with sticks. And then we saw their world properly, and the bridge went silent in a way I had never heard before. The third planet was wrapped in a ring of light, not a natural ring like the cold giants wore, a built ring. A band of metal and glass that circled the whole world like a crown. And it turned slowly, and it glittered with 1,000 lit windows. Ships moved between the ring and the surface in steady lines, up and down, like blood moving through a living body. The oceans below were not wild. They were marked into shapes, into farms, into careful patterns that only a planning mind could draw. Even the weather seemed wrong. Storms that should have spread across whole continents stopped at clean, straight edges, as if someone had told the sky where it was allowed to rain. They control their own weather, Tessin whispered. Sub-Commander, they tell their own storms where to go. I could not answer her. My throat had closed. In 400 years, this species had gone from throwing metal at each other to bending their own sky. The number did not fit inside my head. I kept doing the math, again and again, and every time the answer came back the same. And every time the answer was a thing that should not be allowed to exist. There is something on the moon, our sensor officer said. His name was Davril, and he was the steadiest creature I had ever served with, and his voice was shaking. On the surface of the smaller body, a structure, it is large, it is old, and Sub-Commander, say it, it is pointed at us. The cold in my stomach spread out through all my limbs. Pointed at us how, a weapon? I do not know what it is, but it moved. As we moved it turned. It is tracking us, Sub-Commander. It has been tracking us since we passed the cold giants. It found us when we were dark. It found us with no active scans running. It found us in the shadow, and it has not looked away. I stood very still in the center of my own bridge, surrounded by my crew, on the most powerful ship the hegemony had given me. and I understood for the first time in 30 years that I was the one being watched. Then they know we are here, I said. They have known, Dovril answered, longer than we have known they exist. I wanted to believe it was a machine, a dead old machine left running on an empty rock, turning by itself, meaning nothing. I wanted that so badly that I almost gave the order to ignore it. But a good survey officer learns to trust the cold feeling in his gut, and my gut was screaming. Open a listening channel, I said. Everything, every frequency. I want to hear what this system is saying to itself. Tessin worked her station, and the sound of an entire civilization poured into my bridge. It was beautiful, and that was the worst part. There was music in it. There were voices, millions of voices, layered over each other in languages I could not understand. There was laughter somewhere in that flood of sound. There were the small, ordinary noises of a people who were busy living, who had no idea. I thought that something hungry was drifting at the edge of their home. Except they did know. The thing on the moon proved they knew. Sub-Commander, Tessin said, and her voice had changed. It had gone flat and strange. One of the signals is different from the others. Different how? It is not part of their chatter. It is aimed. It is narrow. It is pointed straight at our ship, and only at our ship. She turned to look at me, and her eyes were huge. It is repeating the same short message over and over. Can you understand it? No. But the pattern is clear. It is a greeting pattern. Sub-Commander, somebody down there is saying hello to us. I had spent 30 years arriving at quiet worlds where no one knew my name, and no one looked up to see me coming. I had grown comfortable in the role of the watcher in the dark, the one who decides, the one who is never seen until he chooses to be seen. Now a greeting was crawling up my hull from a world I had been sent to claim, and every instinct I owned told me to run. Pull us back, I ordered. Quiet engines. Slow. We retreat to the cold giants and we report home, and we let the council decide what this is. Engines responding, Dovril said. Backing away. For one breath, I let myself believe we would simply leave, that we would slip back into the dark the way we had come, and carry this impossible news home, and make it someone else's problem. Then every screen on my bridge turned the same shade of pale blue at the same moment, and a voice filled the ship. It was calm, it was patient. It was speaking, clearly and slowly, in the language of the hegemony, my language. The language of a people whose worlds were so far from this little yellow star, that their light had not yet even reached it. You have come a long way, the voice said. There is no need to leave in such a hurry. We have been expecting someone for a very long time, please. Stay a while, we would like to meet you. I have faced many things in my life that I called fear. I understand now that I did not know what the word meant until that moment, on my own bridge, hearing my own language spoken back to me by a world I had been told to think of as prey. The voice waited. It did not threaten. It did not boast. It simply waited, the way a patient host waits for a guest to step through the door, and, somehow, that patience was the most frightening thing of all. Tessin looked at me. Dovril looked at me. Every creature on my bridge looked at me, and I saw in all of them the same question I could not answer. How did they learn to speak to us? Sub-Commander, Tessin whispered. What do we do? I looked at the blue glow of my screens. I looked at the world wrapped in its crown of light, its sky obedient, its oceans tamed, its quiet machine on the moon that had found us in the dark and never once looked away. And I made the choice that would change everything I thought I knew about the universe. Hold position, I said. Open a channel back. The voice came again before I had even finished speaking, warm and unhurried, as if it had heard my decision before I made it. Wonderful, it said. Come down whenever you are ready. We have so much to show you. I gave the order to descend. I told myself it was courage. I told myself a survey officer does not flee from a discovery, that I would gather the truth and carry it home, and be remembered as the one who found them. But as my ship turned its nose toward that glittering world and began to fall, I knew the truth in my gut, the way I had known about the machine on the moon. We were not coming down to study them. They were letting us in. The descent should have been the easy part, and instead it was the moment. I understood how completely we had lost control of our own arrival. My ship is built to fall through any sky. We have done it through acid clouds and frozen storms and air so thin it might as well be empty. I have never given the order to land and felt my hands shake. As we dropped toward that blue world, my hands would not stay still, and I hid them behind my back so my crew would not see. They are guiding us, Dovril said. Sub-Commander, our navigation is being corrected, gently. Something on the surface is steering us toward a landing site. Then resist it, I said. Take manual control. I will choose where we land, not them. I tried. He looked up at me, and there was no shame in his face, only a sick kind of wonder. The corrections are not forced. They are suggestions. Every time I aim for a spot of my own choosing, a better spot is offered. A flatter one, a safer one. The course they are giving me is simply the right course. I keep agreeing with them, because they keep being correct. That was the thing I would learn about these creatures, over and over, until I was sick with it. They did not push, they did not force. They simply turned out to be right, again and again, until pushing back felt like the foolish choice. We came down through the clean, ordered clouds, and the world opened beneath us, and I saw it with my own eyes instead of through a screen. Green, so much green. Forests that rolled to the horizon, but cut through with silver lines of road and rail, every line straight and purposeful. Cities that did not sprawl like wounds but sat in careful shapes, tall and bright, wrapped in growing things, as if these creatures had decided long ago that they would not choose between their machines and their lit living world, but would have both. Rivers that ran clean, air that my sensors told me was breathable, balanced, tended like a garden. And then I saw the scars. We passed over a place where the green simply stopped, where the land turned to flat gray glass, smooth and shining and dead, stretching for a great distance before the green dared to return. The shape of it was wrong. Nature does not make a circle that perfect. Something had happened there, long ago, something with heat beyond imagining, and the ground had melted and frozen into a mirror that still had not healed. What is that? Tessin breathed. Old damage, Dovril said, reading his instruments. Very old. The ground is still slightly warm to the deep scan, but the surface has not been touched in a long time. They left it. They did not rebuild on it. They built a fence around it and left it as it was. We passed another, and another. Across the whole face of that beautiful, tended world, there were these patches of gray glass and frozen ruin. And around every single one the people had built a clean border and let the scar remain. They were not hiding their wounds. They were keeping them. They were putting them on display. They did this to themselves, I said slowly, and as I said it, a cold understanding began to grow in me. Tessin, those scars are everywhere, spread across the whole planet. No invader did this, no outside power. These creatures did this to their own world, with their own hands, and then they survived it, and then they kept the proof. Why would anyone keep proof of their own near ruin? Tessin asked. I did not have an answer yet, but I was beginning to fear one. We landed in a wide green field beside one of their cities, exactly where their gentle suggestions had guided us, and the moment the ship settled, every threatening instinct in my body fired at once. I expected a trap. I expected the field to be ringed with weapons. I expected, the moment we were down and helpless, to learn what these creatures truly wanted. Instead, the field was empty except for a single small vehicle, and beside it stood a single lone figure, waiting in the open with empty hands. One of them, Dovril said. Just one. No weapons that I can detect, no armor, no shielding. Subcommander, they have sent one unarmed creature to greet a hegemony warship. I stared at the figure on my screen. It was tall for one of its kind, I would learn, though I did not know that yet. It had gray on the top of its head, which I would later understand meant age. It stood very straight, hands folded in front of it, patient as the moon machine had been patient, simply waiting for us to decide what we would do. Sending one lone, unarmed elder to meet a ship that had come to claim their world was either the act of a fool, or the act of someone so confident that fear had become unnecessary. I knew deep in my gut which one it was, and it terrified me more than an army would have. I am going out, I said. Subcommander, no. Tessin rose from her station. We do not know what they want. We do not know if the air truly is safe. We do not know anything. That is exactly why I am going out, I said. We will learn nothing hiding inside our own walls. They have shown us no force. They have offered only words. If I cower in here, I tell them we are afraid. And an enemy who knows you are afraid already owns half of you. I will go out, I will stand tall, and I will remind them that the hegemony does not bow. It was a fine speech. I almost believed it myself. The truth was simpler and worse. I went out because I could not stand the waiting. Because the patience of these creatures was crushing me, and I would rather walk into danger than sit one more moment inside it. I took 2 guards and I stepped down onto the soil of their world, and the air did not harm me, and the light of their yellow star fell warm on my skin, and the lone figure watched us come with an expression I could not read. When I was close enough to speak, the figure spoke first, in my language. Slow and clear and kind. Welcome, it said. My name is Grace Holloway. I speak for this world. Thank you for coming down. I know it took courage. The word courage in my own mouth would have been a boast. In hers it was a gift, freely given, and it knocked me off balance more than any threat could have. You speak our language, I said. It came out almost as an accusation. How? Our worlds are far beyond your reach. The light of our suns has not even crossed the distance to you yet. You should not know we exist. You should not know one single word of how we speak." Grace Holloway tilted her head. There was something gentle in the movement, almost sad. "May I show you something?" she said, "instead of telling you. I find that showing works better. Telling, people argue with. Showing is harder to argue with." Every part of my training screamed at me to refuse. To stay in the open, near my ship, where my guards could protect me and my guns could cover me. To never ever follow one of these creatures into a place of its choosing. "Yes," I heard myself say. "Show me." She led us to her small vehicle, and it carried us smoothly and silently toward the city. And through its clear walls I watched her world go by, and I tried to understand it, and I could not. The streets were full of people, thousands of them, going about their lives, working, talking, walking with their young, and not one of them stopped to stare at us. Not one of them pointed, or fled, or gathered in a frightened crowd. A warship had landed at the edge of their city. Creatures from the stars had walked out of it, and these people glanced at us, nodded, and went back to their day, as if the arrival of beings from another world was a thing they had simply been expecting for so long, that it had stopped being surprising. That was when the true scale of it began to reach me. "They are not afraid of us," I said. "No," Grace Holloway agreed. "Why not? We came in a warship. We came armed. We came, and I will be honest with you, we came believing this world was ours to take. Your people should be terrified." "They were," she said simply. "Once, a long time ago, when we first found out we were not alone. There was a great fear. It lasted for years. But fear is like a fire. It burns very hot, and then if you do not feed it, it burns out. We had a long time to let ours burn out. We have known you were coming, Sub-Commander, for a very long time." The vehicle slowed before a tall building of pale stone, plain and old among the brighter towers, and Grace Holloway stepped out, and we followed, because by now I was caught in the current of her certainty, and could no more turn back than a stone could float. Inside, the building was quiet and cool. The walls were lined with cases, and the cases were full of objects. And I did not understand at first what I was looking at. It was a place for keeping things. A place for remembering. And then I saw what was kept in the very first case, and I stopped walking because my legs would not carry me forward. It was a piece of metal, old, scarred, half melted, and I knew it. I knew the shape of it, the markings on its broken side, the curve of its ruined shell. Because I had studied its design as a young officer, it was one of ours. It was a hegemony long-range probe. It was the very kind of machine we had sent ahead to this system 400 years ago. The machine whose old report had called these creatures harmless. "You found our probe," I said. "We found it," Grace Holloway said. "In a year your people would not recognize, drifting near our outer planets. We brought it home. We took it apart, very carefully, one piece at a time, and inside it, Sub-Commander, we found everything. We found your language. We found your maps. We found your records of all the worlds you had visited before ours. We found out who you were, what you did, and what you intended to do to us." She turned and looked at me, and there was no anger in her face, which was so much worse than anger. "We have had a very long time," she said quietly, "to read every word your probe was carrying, to learn your language and to speak it in our sleep, to study your ships, your engines, your weapons, the way you think, the way you decide who is strong and who is prey. We have had centuries, Sub-Commander, to prepare for the day one of you finally came in person." I looked at the broken probe in its case, and I understood at last why the scars on this world were kept and not hidden, why the people did not fear us, why a lone, unarmed elder had walked out alone to greet a warship. They had not been surprised by us. We had been the only ones surprised. "Then you know," I said, and my voice did not sound like my own, "what we came here to do." "We know exactly what you came here to do," Grace Holloway said. "We have known for longer than you have been alive. And that is precisely why we wanted to meet you in person, before you reported back to your council." She gestured toward the long hall of cases stretching ahead of us, full of remembered things, full of kept scars. "Because there are some things about us, Sub-Commander, that your probe could not learn. Things you need to understand before you decide what to tell them. Will you walk with me? Will you let me show you who we really are?" I should have run. Every wise instinct in me said run, return to your ship, climb to the stars, and never look back at this terrible, quiet world that had been waiting for you all along. Instead, I looked down the long hall of all the things these creatures had chosen to remember, and I felt a pull stronger than fear. The oldest pull my kind has ever known. I wanted to understand. "Yes," I said, "show me." And Grace Holloway smiled, the way you smile at someone who has just agreed to learn a truth that will change them forever. And she began to walk, and I followed her into the museum of everything her people had survived. I followed her deeper, and with every step the floor seemed to drop away beneath my certainty. I had walked the halls of conquered worlds before. I had seen the trophies a fearful people keep, the shrines they build to comfort themselves. I expected this place to be the same, a hall of glory, a place where these creatures gathered to feel large. But that is not what it was at all. The first long room was full of their weapons, and I relaxed a little, because weapons I understood. Here, I thought, was the boasting. Here was the proud display of teeth. But as Grace Holloway walked me past the cases, I realized the order was wrong. It ran backward from anything I would have built. The newest, finest weapons were not at the place of honor. They were tucked at the start, almost hidden, small and quiet things behind dark glass. And as we walked forward, the weapons grew older, cruder, heavier. The polished machines gave way to rough metal, and the rough metal gave way to crooked iron, and the crooked iron gave way, at the very end, in the place of greatest honor, to a simple sharpened stone tied to a stick. You have it backward, I said. You have placed your weakest weapon where you should place your strongest. No, Grace Holloway said. We placed our first weapon where it belongs. At the end of the journey, so it is the last thing you see. So you remember where we began. She stopped before the sharpened stone. Every creature in this hall who walks past these cases sees the same thing you are seeing now. They watch our tools of harm grow smaller and quieter and rarer as time moves forward, and they watch them grow larger and crueler as time moves back. We are not proud of these, Sub-Commander. We are ashamed of them. We keep them so we never forget what we are capable of becoming if we stop paying attention. I stared at the sharpened stone. It was such a small, foolish thing, and from that small, foolish thing, in a span of time that made my mind ache, these creatures had climbed to a ring of light around their world and a machine on their moon that could find a darkened warship in the deep. How long, I asked. How long from this stone to your ring of light? Grace Holloway told me a number. I made her say it again because I was certain I had misheard. She said it again, patient as ever, and the number was so small, so impossibly small, that I had to put a hand against the cool glass case to keep my balance. My own people had needed many thousands of years to make that same climb. We thought of ourselves as fast. We thought of ourselves as gifted. The hegemony's whole belief in its right to rule rested on the idea that we were among the quickest minds the stars had ever produced, and that the slow, simple creatures we found on young worlds were ours to guide and ours to use. These creatures had made the same climb in a fraction of the time. And they had done it, I now understood, while turning their own world to gray glass in places, again and again, surviving each time, learning each time, climbing higher each time on the ruins of what they had nearly destroyed. How? I whispered. How is it possible? My people are clever. We are among the cleverest the hegemony has ever recorded, and we are slow next to you. You should not exist. A mind that climbs this fast should burn itself away before it ever reaches the stars. It should ruin its world completely. It should fall and never rise. How are you still here? Grace Holloway was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice had changed. It was lower, heavier, as if she were lifting something heavy and setting it down where I could see it. We almost weren't, she said. Look at the scars on our world from your ship, Sub-Commander. You saw them, the gray glass. We came very, very close to falling and never rising. More than once. There were times in our history when any honest observer would have written us off. When we held the power to end ourselves entirely, and very nearly used it. She looked at me steadily. We did not survive because we were good. We survived because, every single time we came to the edge, just barely enough of us decided not to step off it. And then we kept the proof of how close we came, so the next people would understand the price. She began to walk again, and I followed, into the next hall and the next. And what I saw there I will carry with me for the rest of my life. She showed me her people's long story, and she did not flinch from any of it. She showed me the times they had turned on one another. The times they had let some of their own kind starve while others grew fat. The times they had divided the world into those who mattered and those who did not, and treated the second group as less than living things. She showed me their cruelty, plainly, in case after case, and she named it as cruelty, and she did not look away. And then, beside every dark thing, she showed me the answer to it. Beside the famine, the great effort to feed everyone, the minds who learned to grow more food than the world had ever held. Beside the division, the long, slow fight to tear it down, the ones who stood up and said that every living person counted, and bled for saying it, and won in the end. Beside the times they nearly ended themselves, the treaties, the choices, the quiet, ordinary people who decided that tomorrow was worth more than today's anger. This is the thing your probe could not learn, Grace Holloway said. It could count our cities, it could measure our weapons, it could see what we built, but it could not see this. It could not see that for every cruelty in our story, we grew something to answer it. It could not see that we are a people who make terrible mistakes, and then refuse, absolutely refuse, to be ended by them. Your council looks at young worlds and asks one question: they strong or are they weak? That is the wrong question, Sub-Commander. The question that matters is not whether a people can be broken. Everyone can be broken. The question is whether they get back up. And we, Sub-Commander, always get back up. We have made a hard habit of it. I thought of the worlds I had catalogued in my long career, the quiet ones, the peaceful ones, the ones I had marked as harmless, and watched the hegemony fold gently into itself. I had always believed those worlds were peaceful because they were wise, because peace was the natural end of a clever mind. Standing in that hall, I understood the terrible truth I had carried my whole life and never seen. Those worlds were not peaceful because they were wise. They were peaceful because they were fragile. They had reached their gentle quiet because they had never been tested hard enough to discover what they would do at the edge. They had never been to the edge. They did not know if they would step off it or step back, because the question had never been asked of them. These creatures knew. They had stood at the edge with their whole future in their hands, more than once, and each time they had stepped back. Their peace was not the soft peace of a creature that had never been tried. It was the hard, deliberate, chosen peace of a creature that knew exactly how to end everything, had held that power in its hands, and had decided, again and again, on purpose, not to use it. That is a far more frightening kind of peace, the peace of the unfragile, the peace of those who could destroy and choose not to. You are not peaceful because you are weak, I said slowly. You are peaceful because you have already won every fight a species can fight, including the fight with yourselves. And you grew tired of winning. For the first time, Grace Holloway looked at me as if I had surprised her. Yes, she said softly. That is exactly it. You understand us better than your council ever will. We came at last to the final room, and it was small, and it was nearly empty. And in the center of it stood a single case holding a single object, a small, round blue image of their world, turning slowly, lit from within. There is one more thing your probe carried, Grace Holloway said, that I have not yet shown you. One more thing we found when we took it apart, all those centuries ago, and it is the reason, Sub-Commander, that we did not simply hide from you. It is the reason we built the machine on our moon to watch the dark, and waited, and prepared, and let you walk in our door instead of running from you. What did you find? Your records, she said. Your probe was not empty. It carried the memory of every world your people had visited before us, every survey, every catalog, every report sent home. She looked at the small turning image of her world. We read them all, every one. We learned the names of the worlds your hegemony has found, and studied, and marked as weak, and quietly folded into itself over the long years. We counted them, Sub-Commander. We learned what happened to the peoples who lived on them, the ones who were too fragile to get back up. She turned to me, and at last there was something in her face that was not gentle. It was not anger. It was something colder and steadier, and far more dangerous than anger. It was resolve. There are 12 of them, she said. 12 peoples your hegemony has taken since it began keeping the records your probe carried. 12 worlds of living, thinking beings who looked up one day and saw a ship in their sky and were told they were too weak to matter and were folded away into your empire and were never asked what they wanted. Her voice did not rise. It did not need to. We have known their names for centuries. We have known what was done to them. And we have spent all that time, Sub-Commander, getting ready for the day one of you finally walked it through our door. The little blue world turned and turned in its case. My guards shifted behind me. Somewhere far above, my ship waited and my crew waited, and the council waited beyond the stars for a report I no longer had any idea how to write. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Why show me your shame, your weapons, your scars, your knowledge of what we have done? You have shown me everything that should make me run home and warn them. You have handed me every reason to fear you. Why? Grace Holloway folded her hands the same patient way. She had stood alone in that empty field to greet a warship, and she answered me. Because we are not going to let you take a 13th, she said. And before this is over, Sub-Commander, I am going to need you to help me make sure of it. I returned to my ship a different creature than the one who had left it, and the first thing my commander did was order me to forget everything I had seen. His name was High Captain Orsic, and he outranked me, and he had stayed aboard the whole time, watching through my eyes, listening through my ears. He had heard every word in that museum, and he had decided, in the way of frightened powerful creatures everywhere, that the answer to a thing too large to understand was to pretend it was small. Soft talk, he said, when I told him what Grace Holloway had shown me. Tricks. They want us scared so we leave them alone. It is the oldest game a weak people plays. They puff themselves up. They speak of their great history. They show you their little museum and tell you their little stories. And they hope you sail home and warn the council away. I have seen it 100 times. You have not seen this, I said. Hi, Captain. They spoke our language before we said a word. They steered our landing without forcing it. They keep a machine on their moon that found us in the dark. They have read every record our probe carried. They know about the 12 worlds. This is not a weak people pretending to be strong. This is a strong people we mistook for weak, and now they are deciding what to do with us. Then we do not give them the chance to decide, Orsek said. He turned to the bridge crew. Prepare the fold drive, we are leaving. We return to hegemony space at full speed, and we report that this world is a threat to be dealt with by a fleet, not a survey ship. Let the warriors handle what the scholars cannot. Hi, Captain. Tesson's voice was tight. If we leave now, without understanding them, we tell the council to send a fleet against a people who can do all of this. We do not know what they can do. We have seen only what they have chosen to show us. Sending a fleet blind against them could be the worst mistake the hegemony has ever made. Or it could be the only safe choice, Orsek snapped. Prepare the drive. That is an order. I watched my crew obey him. Because that is what crews do. And I felt the moment slipping towards something terrible. I knew, the way I had known about the machine on the moon, that fleeing was the wrong choice. That these creatures had not shown us their patience and their scars and their long careful preparations so that we could run away from them. They had let us in for a reason, and a people this careful did not let you in unless they had already decided how the door would close behind you. Hi, Captain, I said quietly. I do not think they will let us leave. They are one world, Orsek said. We are a hegemony warship. They have no fleet. They have no ships of war beyond their own sky. They cannot follow us into the fold. The moment we jump, we are gone and there is nothing they can do. He bared his teeth at me, the old confident gesture of our kind. You have let their soft talk frighten you, Vrelkath. You always were too curious for your own good. Sit down. Watch. I will show you that a strong hand is worth more than a clever mind. The fold drive spun up. I felt it in my bones. The deep building hum. That means the ship is about to fold the distance between 2 points and step across it in an instant. I had felt it 1,000 times. It is the most reliable system we have. It does not fail. It cannot be stopped from outside. There is no force in the universe, we believe, that can reach into a ship and still a fold drive that has decided to jump. The hum built. The lights dimmed as the power gathered. Orsek stood in the center of the bridge with his arms folded, triumphant, ready to vanish into the safe dark of the fold and leave this frightening world behind forever. And then the hum stopped, not failed, not broke, stopped. The way a sound stops when a calm hand reaches over and switches it off. The lights came back up. The deep building power simply drained away, smoothly and gently, as if someone who understood our drive better than we did had reached across the space between the ground and our ship and turned a key we did not know existed. The bridge went silent. What happened? Orsek's voice cracked. Why did we not jump? Engineer, why did we not jump? The drive is offline, Dovril said slowly, staring at his readings as if they were written in a language he had only just realized he could not read. It did not fail, High Captain. There is no fault, no damage, no error. It was told to stop. Something sent a command into our drive in our own command language. A command I did not know our drive would even accept, and it obeyed. Our fold drive obeyed an order from the surface of their world. The screens turned pale blue, the same calm shade as before, and Grace Holloway's voice filled the ship, as warm and unhurried as it had been the moment we first arrived. Please do not try to leave like that, she said. Not because we wish to keep you. You are free to go. But if you fold away now, frightened and half-understanding, you will carry a frightened, half-understood story home to your council, and frightened, half-understood stories are how terrible things begin. We have spent centuries trying to make sure that when this day came, it would not begin that way. So we have switched off your drive, only the drive. Nothing else. You are unharmed, your ship is whole. We simply ask, again, that you talk with us before you decide what we are. Orsek made a sound I had never heard a high captain make. He stumbled back into his chair, and I watched the great confidence drain out of him, exactly the way the power had drained out of our drive, smoothly and completely, leaving nothing behind. They had reached into our ship. They had touched the one system we believed could never be touched from outside, and they had done it not to harm us, not to threaten us, but to stop us from doing something foolish. They had used the most frightening power I had ever witnessed to perform the gentlest possible act. They had switched off our escape the way you take a sharp object from the hands of a child, not in anger but in care. And that, I understood at last, was the true shape of the terror these creatures carried. It was not that they could destroy us. Many peoples can destroy. It was that they could have destroyed us at any moment since we entered their system, and had chosen, every single time, not to. The machine on the moon could have struck us, in the dark, and did not. The hand that steered our landing could have crashed us into the ground, and did not. The voice that reached into our drive could have torn the ship apart, instead of simply quieting it, and did not. Every moment we had been here, we had been held in an open hand that could close at any time, and the hand had chosen, over and over, to stay open. A people who could harm you and do not are far more frightening than a people who cannot. The first kind has made a choice, and a choice can change. I looked at Orsic, slumped in his chair, his confidence gone, his orders useless, his great strong hand revealed as nothing at all against a clever mind that had been preparing for him for 400 years. And I understood that he could not lead us out of this. He did not have the shape of mind it would take. He could only flee, and they would not let him flee, and so he would sit in that chair and give order after useless order until something broke. I made the second choice that would change my life. "Hi, Captain Orsic," I said, and my voice was steady now, steadier than it had been since we arrived. "You are relieved of command." He turned to stare at me. "You cannot. You do not have the authority. I am the High Captain of this vessel. You are the High Captain of a vessel that can no longer move because you tried to flee a people you did not understand against the advice of your survey officer and walked us into the exact trap your fear created," I said. "Our law is clear. When a commander's judgment endangers the ship and the crew, the next senior officer may relieve him. I am relieving you, not out of ambition, out of necessity. You cannot get us home. I am going to try." I looked around the bridge at my crew, at Tessin, who had warned us, at Dovril, who had read the truth in his instruments and not looked away, at the others, frightened and waiting, looking to someone, anyone, to tell them what to do. "Does anyone here challenge this?" I asked. No one did. One by one they turned from Orsic to me, and the weight of command settled onto my shoulders, heavier than anything I had ever carried. Orsic did not fight it. The fight had gone out of him the moment the drive stopped. He simply rose and walked to the back of the bridge and sat down against the wall. A broken, strong hand who had finally met a mind he could not overpower. I felt no triumph. I felt only the cold knowledge that everything now depended on choices I did not yet know how to make. I turned to the blue glow of the screen, where Grace Holloway was waiting, as she had been waiting, it seemed, for centuries. "This is Subcommander Vrelkath," I said. "I am now in command of this vessel. You have switched off our drive. You have shown us your world, your history, your knowledge of what we have done. You have proven, beyond any doubt, that you could have ended us at any moment and did not. So I will ask you plainly, as one commander to another, what do you want from us? What is it you have been preparing for all this time? Tell me, and I give you my word I will listen." There was a pause. When Grace Holloway answered, there was a new note in her voice, and it took me a moment to understand it, because it was the last thing I expected. It was respect. "Thank you," she said. "That is the first sensible question anyone on your ship has asked since you arrived. I will answer it honestly, because you have earned an honest answer." The little image of her world, I imagined, still turning slowly in its quiet case far below. "We are going to give you back your drive. We are going to let you go home. And we are going to send one of our people with you, one person, unarmed, carrying something we need your counsel to receive. That is all we want, Sub-Commander. To send a single messenger home with you, bearing a single message. Will you carry our messenger to your council? One messenger." I repeated, "Unarmed, that is all. That is all." I thought of everything I had seen, the scars they kept, the weapons in backward order, the 12 worlds, the hand that held us and would not close, and I understood that whatever this messenger carried, it would be the most important thing my ship had ever held, and that the future of more than one people would turn on whether I agreed to carry it. "Send your messenger," I said. "I will carry them. You have my word." "Then we understand each other," Grace Holloway said. "Your drive is already coming back online. Your messenger will arrive within the hour. Safe travels, Subcommander Vrelkath. And thank you, truly, for being the one who finally chose to listen." The screen faded. The deep hum of the fold drive began to build again beneath my feet, restored as easily as it had been silenced, and I stood on the bridge of my own ship, in command at last, carrying a promise I did not fully understand to a council that would not want to hear it. I had no idea then what the messenger would bring. I only knew in my gut, the way I had known everything that mattered since we arrived, that nothing in the hegemony would ever be the same once it crossed our border. I was right, but not in any way I could have imagined. The messenger they sent was a quiet man named Daniel Webb, and for the first 3 days of our journey home, I was certain he was the most dangerous creature I had ever allowed aboard my ship. I watched him constantly. I had my crew watch him. I expected, at any moment, the trick to reveal itself, the hidden weapon, the secret purpose, the trap inside the trap. He had come aboard alone, with a single small case and nothing else, and he had thanked my crew for letting him sleep in their cramped guest quarters. And he had asked, on the very first day, whether anyone would teach him a game we played to pass the long hours of the fold. That was the first thing that broke my certainty. He wanted to learn our games. By the second day, he was playing a card game with Davrel and 2 others in the rest quarters, losing cheerfully, laughing when he lost, asking questions about the rules and about the players themselves. By the 3rd day, half my crew had stopped watching him as a threat and started watching him as a friend, and I had to remind them, sharply, that we did not know what he carried or why. What does it matter what he carries? Davrel said to me quietly, away from the others, if he is the first creature any of us has met who treats us as if we are real. He asks about my hatchlings, sub-commander, by name. He remembered their names after I said them once. When did anyone last ask you about yours? I did not have an answer. The hegemony does not ask about your hatchlings. The hegemony asks about your report. So on the 4th day, I went to Daniel Webb myself, and I sat across from him, and I asked him the question that had been growing in me since he came aboard. What is in the case? He looked at me with his calm, tired eyes, and he did not pretend not to understand. I wondered when you would ask, he said. I am glad it is you asking, and not the other one, the High Captain. He would not understand the answer. I think you might. Then tell me. It will be easier to show you, he said. Your people keep saying you prefer to be told. We have found that showing works better. He almost smiled. May I? I nodded. He opened the small case. Inside was a single device, plain and dark, no larger than my hand. He touched it, and the air above it filled with light, and the light became names. Hundreds of names. Thousands. More than I could count, scrolling slowly upward. Each one in a different script, a different language, a different alphabet, until the air of my quarters was thick with the written words of peoples I had never seen. Do you know what these are? Daniel Webb asked. No. They are the names of the dead, he said quietly, and the names of the living, from the 12 worlds your hegemony has taken. Every person your records counted, every name your probe carried home in its memory, and every name we could find afterward, by listening to your own transmissions. For the last 400 years, we have been gathering them this whole time, Sub-Commander. Every name your empire wrote down and forgot, we wrote down and remembered. I stared at the slow river of names. Why? Because your council told those 12 peoples that they did not matter, he said. That they were too weak to count, that they were yours to use because they could not stop you. Your records say so, in your own words. We read them. And we decided, a long time ago, that this was the thing about your empire we could not allow to stand. He looked up at me through the falling light of the names. Not your ships, not your weapons. Those we could deal with if we had to. The thing we could not allow was the lie. The lie that some thinking, feeling people simply do not matter because they cannot fight back. He touched the device again, and the names faded, and something else took their place. Records, hegemony records, our own files, our own surveys, our own cold reports of the 12 takings, every one of them decrypted and laid open, and gathered into a single great archive. This is everything, Daniel Webb said. Every report your empire wrote about those 12 worlds, every order, every record of what was promised and what was done. All of it, in your own words, taken from your own probe and your own transmissions, decrypted completely, organized, and made ready. He let me look at it for a long moment, and it is not only here in this case, it is ready to be sent. We have prepared it to be broadcast across every channel the hegemony uses, in every language of every one of those 12 peoples, so that each of them can read, in your own words, exactly what was done to them and exactly what was said about them when they could not hear. The cold came into my stomach again, the old familiar cold, but it was a different shape now. You are going to expose the council, I said. To its own subjects, you are going to show the 12 peoples the truth of how they were taken. Yes. That will start a war. I rose from my seat. Daniel Webb, do you understand what you are carrying? If the 12 peoples learn this, all at once, in their own languages, they will rise. There will be fighting across 100 worlds. The hegemony will answer with everything it has. You will set fire to the whole of known space. Is that what your world wants? Is that the message? You spent 400 years preparing to start the largest conflict the stars have ever seen. And Daniel Webb did the thing that finally, completely broke every idea I had carried about these creatures. He shook his head, and he looked genuinely sad, and he said, "No, you still do not understand us. After everything Grace showed you, you still think the answer is fighting. That is what your council would do. That is what your hegemony has always done. It is the only tool you trust." He closed the case gently. "We are not sending this to start a war, Sub-Commander. We are sending it to end the need for one. How can the truth end a war? Because the hegemony does not rule those 12 peoples with ships," he said. "Not really. 12 worlds is too many to hold by force forever. You rule them with the lie, with the belief planted in each of them that they are weak, that they are alone, that no one else knows or cares what happened to them, that resistance is hopeless because they do not matter and never did. That lie is the chain. The ships are only there to make the lie look true." He stood, facing me, calm and certain. "We are not going to break the chain by fighting your ships. We are going to break it by destroying the lie. We are going to show 12 peoples, all at once, that someone remembered their names, that someone wrote down what was done to them, that they are not alone, and never were, and that a whole world they have never met has spent 400 years getting ready to stand beside them. We are not bringing them weapons, Sub-Commander. We are bringing them the one thing your empire spent centuries making sure they could never have. We are bringing them each other. And we are bringing them the truth." I sat back down slowly because my legs would not hold me. I understood it now, all of it, the patience, the scars they kept on display, the weapons in backward order, the newest hidden and the oldest honored, the lone unarmed elder who walked out to greet a warship, the hand that held us and would not close, the messenger who learned our games and remembered our hatchlings' names. These creatures had not spent 400 years preparing to conquer the hegemony. They had no interest in ruling anyone. They had spent 400 years preparing to make the hegemony's subjects stop being afraid. And they were going to do it not with fleets, but with truth, delivered all at once, undeniable, in everyone's own language, so that the chain of the lie would simply fall apart in a single moment, across 100 worlds, and there would be nothing left for the council to rule by fear. It was the most frightening plan I had ever heard, because there was no way to fight it. You cannot send a fleet against the truth. You cannot bomb a fact. You cannot full jump away from your own records, spoken back to you in the voices of the people you wronged. The hegemony had built its whole power on a story, and these patient, gentle, unbreakable creatures had spent 4 centuries quietly, gathering every word needed to prove the story false. "They will fight you anyway," I said softly. "The council, when they understand what you have done, they will not let go of 12 worlds without a fight." "Perhaps," Daniel Webb said. "We hope they will choose otherwise once the lie is gone and they see the cost clearly. But we are ready for either path. Not to destroy them, Sub-Commander. We do not want your people destroyed. We want your people to stop. There is a difference. And it is the most important difference there is. We learned it the hard way, on our own world, in front of all those scars you saw. We learned that you do not have to break a people to change them. You only have to take away the lie they were hiding behind, and let them see themselves clearly, and trust that just barely enough of them will choose to step back from the edge. Enough of us did. We are betting that enough of you will too." We did not speak much more on the journey home. There was not much left to say. I spent the last days of the fold watching Daniel Webb teach my crew their games and ask about their families. And I understood that this was not a trick or a softness, it was the whole point. He treated every creature aboard my ship as if they were real, as if they mattered, as if their names were worth remembering, because that was the exact truth his entire world had crossed the stars to deliver. He was the message as much as the case was. He was showing us, in the small ordinary way he lived, the thing his people believed that the hegemony had forgotten. When we crossed the border into hegemony space, I went to the bridge, and I sat in the command chair, and I began to write my report. It would go to the council. It would be read by the most powerful creatures of my people. And I knew, as I wrote it, that it would likely end my career, and perhaps far more than my career. I wrote it anyway. I wrote the truth, the way Grace Holloway had shown me the truth, plainly and without looking away. I told them we had gone to a world we believed held primitive life, easy to claim, simple to fold away. I told them what we had actually found. A people who had climbed from a sharpened stone to a ring of light in a span of time that should not be possible. A people who had stood at the edge of their own ending more than once and chosen, every time, to step back. A people who had read our every record, learned our every language, touched the one system we believed could never be touched, and held us in an open hand they refused to close. A people whose peace was not the soft peace of the weak but the hard, chosen piece of those who could destroy and would not. And I told them the most important thing of all, that this people was not coming to conquer us, that they wanted nothing we owned, that they had crossed the long dark for one reason only, to take away a lie we had told for 400 years, and to give 12 forgotten peoples back their own names, and that there was no fleet in all the hegemony that could stop the truth from arriving. I finished report with the only honest recommendation I could give. We went looking for primitives, I wrote. We found a people who survived themselves, and who learned from it the one lesson we never did. They are not coming to harm us. They are coming to hold up a mirror and let us decide what we see. I recommend, with everything I have, that we do not raise a single weapon against them. Not because we would lose, though I believe we would, but because they are right, and somewhere deep beneath all our power, the Council knows they are right. And that is the thing we are truly afraid of. They did not threaten us. They did not boast. They simply remembered the names we tried to forget. And that, honored Council, is precisely the problem. There is no third path here. There is only the choice they have already made themselves, more than once in front of all their scars. Step back from the edge, or step off it. They have shown us how to step back. I pray we are wise enough to learn from a people we once called prey. I sent the report. Then I sat in the quiet of my bridge with a gentle messenger asleep in the guest quarters and an archive of the truth waiting in a small dark case, and I watched the stars of the hegemony drift past, and I waited to learn what my people would choose. I do not yet know the answer. No one does. The choice is still being made on 1,000 worlds, in 100 halls of power, as the truth spreads outward in everyone's own language, and 12 forgotten peoples learn, one by one, that someone remembered them. But I know this. The stars were never afraid of these creatures' weapons. We have weapons too. The stars grew afraid the moment they understood that here, at last, was a people who could not be ruled by fear, because they had already faced the worst thing in the universe, themselves, and survived it, and chosen to be gentle anyway. We expected to find primitive life on a small blue world. We found the one thing in all the cold dark that a frightened empire built on lies can never, ever stand against. We found the truth, with a patient face and a remembered name, and it had been waiting for us all along.